Let's see here. Hello, students of Economics 3200. It is Monday, the 27th um, of July, and you should have gotten my, what do I want to say here, my announcement yesterday that the midterm examination will be held on July 30th. That is to say that the complete examination should be sent to me by email by 9 o'clock Friday, the 31st of July. I've postponed the exam 2 days, and it's because of the trouble we've had with Cloud and with the Baruch Blackboard. So everything is going to be put on the YouTube from lecture 10 on. This tonight will be lecture will be lecture 13. 12 was put on last night, not put on and not at the Blackboard, but sent out to you as an announcement, and there's a hyperlink, and all you have to do is click on that hyperlink and you will get to the lecture. So there you are. So by early Wednesday morning, I hope to have a kind of a study guide for the exam for you, what to study. Maybe I'll get it done tomorrow. That might be even better. But anyway, tonight we're going to look into the secondary functions of money. And the primary function, of course, is money functioning as a medium of exchange. And then we're going to do some work with the liquidity concept. But we want to have handout number 3 in front of us. And I'm going to put handout number 3 on the share screen here on Zoom. And yes, okay, you should see handout number 3. And I have questions about the origin of money theory on here, but what's really important is the secondary functions of money here. And we have several of them, and I apologize for the typing here. I just don't know what happened. You can still read it. The first function that I want you to recognize is the facilitator of credit transactions. Money is a facilitator of credit transactions, or standard of deferred payments. And it's best to consider this as part of the medium of exchange function. A credit transaction is the exchange of a present good for a future good. So unlike cash transactions, the parties to a credit transaction perform their obligation to one another at different times. So the creditor leads off, and the debtor follows with payment of interest and principal. We have a transmitter of value through time and space. Value here it's almost as if it were objective, but it's really not. And suppose you, in the 19th century, late 19th century, owned a vineyard in France, and your vines in your vineyard caught a disease, a fungus, if you will, a rot. And this has happened to you many times in your life, so you just totally get fed up, and you decide to sell your vineyard in France, travel across the Atlantic and into the Pacific. Remember, the Panama Canal doesn't exist back in the 19th century, and we have you're on a masted ship. You're not on a motor-powered ship, and you sell your vineyard in France, and you sell it for gold, and you bring the gold with you to exchange in California for a new vineyard. And so a crossing of the Atlantic and then the Pacific would probably take you 7 to 9 months. Particularly dangerous trip, as perhaps many of you know. The Atlantic Ocean is very choppy, very dangerous, and some of the most difficult waters in the world, if you will, are to be found in the Atlantic Ocean, and none more so than the tip of South America, which is what, Cape Horn, I believe. And you have waves there all the time, 40 feet high, and it's quite a feat to get from the Atlantic to the Pacific that way. So what are we saying? When you finally arrive in California, it will be 7 to 9 months. The difficult part of the Pacific is that you could be stranded in a dead calm and for 2 or 3 months even. So for a massive ship. So anyway, the gold travels through time and through space, and you by land by in the net what it will be the Napa Valley or Simi Valley, and you buy a new vineyard, and you're one of the people who start the California wine industry. So money here is a transmitter of value through time. Takes you 7 to 9 months to get there, and space. You have you're in France, and now you're in California, and wow. So that's that. General medium of payment function is important. This coincides with the legal concept of money. If one keeps in mind that the medium of exchange function includes the payment of money prices and the repayment of loans, then there is neither necessity nor justification for further discussion of a special employment or even function of money as a medium of payment. But let's try to understand the legal function of money. Suppose you and I have entered into a contract, a lease. I'm your tenant, and you're the landlord. And let me further assume that in this example, hypothetically, of course, that I don't like you, the landlord, and I've decided not to pay you rent. So let's see. Today is we're in July. We're going to pay rent for August and September and October and November and December of this year. And so I let 2 months go by. I let August and September go by without paying you rent. And all of a sudden I see you on the street and you yell out to me and you say, I haven't received your rent. What happened? And I say to you, well, I sent the checks. Didn't you receive them? And I really didn't. And then October goes by and no rent is paid by me. And same for November and December. Then finally in January, you, the landlord, get fed up and you take me to court and sue me for back rent. And a court's job is to determine whether a tort has occurred, meaning a legal harm to the plaintiff, and the plaintiff would be the landlord, and the defendant would be the tenant. And it's established that I did not pay the rent, so I owe 5 months rent, and there may be a fine. So once a tort is determined, then question arises: what will satisfy as a medium of payment to satisfy the obligation that I, the tenant, have toward you, the landlord? And here the court could really decide on anything. It could say, well, number 2 lead pencils would be satisfactory. A number 2 lead pencil, let's say, is, says the court, now equivalent to $500. and suppose your rent is $2,500. So all you have to do is give to the landlord 5 number 2 lead pencils. Well, obviously this isn't going to sit well, and all the landlords of this country would be up in arms if a number 2 lead pencil was considered payment for rent. Excuse me. So what we're saying is money is the general medium of payment, and not number 2 lead pencils. And it's not in the interest of a core to be too exclusive, too choosy about what the medium of payment is. It would get itself into trouble declaring number 2 lead pencils as a medium of payment. But so why not go along with general commercial usage and consider money as payment for goods and services? And so that you see money is a general medium of payment. And this function happens to coincide with the legal concept. So there you have it. The measure of value, well, value is subjective, so that's invalid. You can read the price index one, which is interesting enough. And then we have what I consider to be the most important secondary function of money. Not as important as the medium of exchange function, but let's see where we can, how we can take this. The fact that money is the most marketable good in an economy means today that there is a money price for all goods and services, other than money, of course, in the economy. A common denominator of exchange values exists in a word money. All prices are expressed in terms of money. Because of the market, well, the market enables any commodity to be turned into money, and money into any commodity, while certain mental manipulations become possible. For example, accounting. For another example, economic calculation, which entrepreneurs go through. And the key concepts of capital, income, profit and loss, expenditure, savings, cost, and yield are possible because of this function. These are the important concepts of accounting. So we say the function of money as a common denominator of values is really, really important. And this very function addresses the intellectual needs of mankind. Now, again, because there are money prices for everything, every good, every service, then certain mental manipulations become possible. And you don't have to be an accountant, but you can look at something and determine its monetary value. And you can, for example, this watch is, I think it's around $200 when I bought it. I don't know what it would be now. It's kind of a collector's item. The Samsung 5G is roughly $1,000. We haven't accounted for discounts, of course. And any good, well, you can come to its value. And then everybody, if you have a certain amount of money piled up in a room to the ceiling, let's say, you can ask yourself, well, how many Ferraris can I buy with that money? That type of thing. So we can engage in something called economic calculation, and we do it all the time. We really don't even pay attention to it. How much is a loaf of Wonder Bread? It's around $4, that type of thing. So you think of in monetary terms, and then you think in physical terms, and all of this is possible. because of the common denominator of values function. So what are we saying here? Accounting becomes possible as well. And there are, I'm going to turn a light on in the room here. There are 8 key accounting concepts, and I want you to know these. They're going to appear on the exam in a unique way. I'll tell you that in a moment. But what do we want to say here? Goodness, let me put this, I'll stop the share here. Okay. What I want to say to you is this mental manipulation can be formalized because we can take the perspective of an accountant. And remember, the perspective of an accountant is that of what? A economic historian. And so he has these 8 key accounting concepts, and what he's going to do is put together a story to tell you whether a firm is doing well or not, a corporation is doing well, and an individual too. So accountants are historians, and they make use of the common denominator of values function, and they try to put together a story. So what is well, 8 key concepts of accounting are: 1, capital. And what is the capital? It's the input you have into a company or corporation, into a firm. And then what is income? Well, income, you can always ask the question, what's in it for me to own or have this company? Well, a stream of income. And that stream of income, we hope, or you hope, is larger than the income you could earn working for somebody else. So when you look at a business, when you look at a firm, a corporation, whatever, you know, this is a really key concept. Then profit, the profit here is a measure of whether you're meeting the most urgent wants and needs of your clientele, of consumers, if you will. And profit has to be positive, of course. And if you've made a mistake with your corporation, if it's not doing so well, it's going to perhaps even earn a loss. And of course, we have the terms that would talk about profitability as super marginally profitable, meaning the marginal business is what? Earning entrepreneurial profits, super amount of profits. The marginally profitable firm is earning what would be equal to the rate of interest as a return, and then sub-marginally profitable would be those that are either experiencing a loss or have a return that's so small that it's judged to be a mistake. So we have the 4 concepts already: capital and income. We have profit and loss. We have what else? We have oh goodness, expenditures and savings. And with expenditures, this takes us into cash flow analysis, and you want to look at those. It's thought that if you look at the free cash flows of a firm, you're looking at the present day projects that the firm is involved in, and you sum up the free cash flows, and then you multiply it by a discount factor, 1 divided by, in parentheses, 1 plus the interest rate, raised to a certain power. Then this is called present value, or net present value, and if the net present value is greater than 0, then it pays to invest in the firm. And if it's less than zero, then you don't invest. And everybody, you got to be careful here with the choice of the discount rate, that is the interest rate in the formula. And if we use extremely low rates, such as we have today, then it's possible that your economic calculation has an error in it. What's the word? Is biased or unreal. And well, I remember, for example, going to Saudi Arabia in 2013, and I had a class of 25 or 30 people, teaching them corporate finance, mind you, in 5 days. Oh, what a job that was. But we talked about this in our net present calculations, and each student, they were young men, would in a year's time come up with 20, 25 possibilities of investments for the leadership to invest in. And I said to them, look, that's easy to do. Why? Because interest rates are extremely low, and you can come up with any number of projects, but many of them probably won't meet the most urgent wants and needs of consumers. They may be duds, they may be failures. And what I want you to do is if I were your employer, I would want you to come up with 2 or 3 a year, and as with the discount rate, use minimally 12%. That's kind of a rule of thumb. But more than that, from my perspective, about 17 or 18%. And what I have in mind there is that super marginally profitable manufacturing firms earn 17 or 18% return on equity or on enterprise value, depends on which one you use. So there you have it. Expenditures and net present value is part of the story. Then we have saving. Saving is necessary for each firm, each corporation, business, individual. Why? Because they have to meet interest expense, they have to meet depreciation and amortization, of course, same thing as interest. Also, everybody, you save sometimes to increase your capital. So the self-financing is possible. So everybody has to save. And then we have costs of production. An accountant will want to know those costs to put together a cost of production for each product or project. And then a yield. Yield is a concept that permits you to judge various investment opportunities. If the yield is low, you kind of stay away from those. If it's high, you look into it more. So these 8 key concepts are important to the accountant as an economic historian, as someone who's going to put together that story to tell the owner of a corporation or firm whether his firm has been successful. And the story will differ with the details, and a lot of the detail is provided by this economic calculation. The secondary function of a common denominator of values permits economic calculation. And then people, we would adopt the perspective now of an entrepreneur. No longer will we be an economic historian, and that is a bookkeeper, an accountant, a CPA. We're going to be the person who puts together all the factors of production into a business unit. And so for those 8 key concepts, unlike with the CPA, we ask that you come up with an estimate of each: expected capital for starting a firm, expected revenue and therefore income stream, expected profit, expected loss, if any, God forbid, of course, and expected free cash flows. We have expected saving and expected cost of production, and of course, expected yield or return. So the entrepreneur is going to put together a story for him or herself to persuade him or herself to start the business or expand it, if an expansion is what is being deliberated. But you've got to put together a story with these estimates. And the estimates are formed in an environment in which we do not have complete information. And sometimes we have wrong information. So incomplete information and imperfect information gives us the uncertainty of the future. And as an entrepreneur, you face the uncertainty of the future all the time. But don't you see, this economic calculation is important, because what you're trying to do is determine whether you're going to invest or not, and determine whether you can meet the most urgent wants and needs of consumers, and you're really adjusting to change. So we have these 8 key concepts with the word expected is put in front of each one. Now, everybody, this concept of economic calculation, especially in the bookkeeper or CPA sense and entrepreneurial sense, we call economic calculation, but don't you see, it's a means of determining whether, determining how to adjust to a changing landscape. And right now, for example, the retail sector in this country is in trouble because of the coronavirus. And there's a lot that goes into this, but should the retail sector be as large as it is? Should we have as many retail stores as we have had? And all of this is an entrepreneurial decision to be made, whether to shrink that sector or to expand it or keep it the same, of course. And so we have economic calculation. Now, everyone, there is a tremendous fight that went on in the early 20th century. And it was over which form of economic organization is the best. And we have, of course, socialism, the socialist commonwealth versus a market economy where you have some competition. So everyone, the world mostly is socialist. It's the dominant ideology. And, if you go to areas outside North America, you're going to see it. Europeans it's almost like a religion to them. Socialism is the way, the light and the way. And then to those of us who live in the United States and in other parts of North America, we prefer the market. But, there's a primary case against the market system. Number one, poverty and destitution persists. And all you have to do is go over to Madison Square Garden Park around 11 o'clock or so, and you'll see the bench bums on the park seating, on the benches. Then you can go to 32nd Street and walk toward Penn Station, and they're lying down on the crates from the subway. The warmth comes up, keeps them warm in the overnight in all seasons. What do we want to say here? it's true, poverty and destitution do persist, and there are cracks in our system, and people fall through it. A lot of truth to these criticisms. And the other one is the inequality of income and wealth, and of course we know about that. This discrepancy is increasing. Never has it been this far apart in our society, and a lot more work has to be done on it, empirical work. And then probably the third factor that scores big time points, most important factor, is the recurrence of the business cycle. The insecurity brought on by the recurrence of the business cycle and by technological unemployment. So everyone, the market system is not perfect. It has many criticisms. But if we go back to the 20th century and to the beginning of it, some famous economists made super major criticisms of the socialist commonwealth. And one of them was carried out by two Austrian economists, really megastars, big time. They're hard to beat no matter what. Friedrich Hayek and Ludwig Mises. And it was Mises who said, socialism is impossible. Why? Because it has no means of economic calculation. And what are we saying? The socialist commonwealth controls the factors of production and then, of course, of distribution. So there really isn't need for money. There isn't need for exchange. So in such the pure commonwealth, you don't have money, you don't have transactions at all, because this is determined by government. So, but it's really impossible, because our uncertainty guides our world, of course, and there is change, a changing landscape, it seems, almost every day. So how do the two systems adjust to change? You have the market system, of which practices economic calculation, and don't you see, that's useful to us, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But we also have the socialist commonwealth. There is no economic calculation in the socialist commonwealth, and so there's not an adjustment to change. If if our evaluations, our preferences change, and maybe we need a new business to start or expand a firm, there's no way that the socialist commonwealth can find this out or even attempt to meet change except by trial and error. So the socialist commonwealth is hard put to show that it can adjust to change, and it's actually impossible because it has no means of economic calculation. And this criticism is decisive, and it really put the socialists on the defensive, and they really haven't recovered from it. Now, with the market system, and here's where we get to the midterm examination, I can ask you the question, how does the market system adjust to change? If there's a changing landscape, how does it adjust so as to meet the most urgent wants and needs of the consumer? And there are two ways. We talked about economic calculation, but permit me to also bring in the price mechanism. The price mechanism has two functions. Number one, price equates supply and demand. And all those who are willing to pay the market price get the good. So, if you're like me, you wake up in the morning and you're in a fog until you get that first cup of coffee or tea. And so suppose you had to go to your favorite diner and the charge for a cup of coffee is $20. Some would pay it, but invariably most people would not. And so most people don't get the good because the price is above equilibrium. There's an excess supply of it. It's not good for producers. They have too much coffee on hand. And so at $20, price does not equate supply and demand. And if you set the price at 10 cents a cup, then there's an excess demand situation. And not everybody would get the good because not enough is produced. So enough of that. You've had price theory. You know what I'm talking about. If you permit price to equate supply and demand, then change is met, at least immediate change on a daily basis. Say you wake up in the morning and something has happened, and so prices reflect the something that has happened. And then just as important, and really most important to the changing landscape idea, is that price directs production. For example, just let me use a crazy example. Let's suppose God Almighty waves his hand all over us and our consumption of chocolate candy, for example, quadruples. Well, maybe we don't have enough manufacturing firms of chocolate candy. We have a bottleneck, but that's resolved. The price of chocolate goes up, and that's a signal to producers who don't even know who you are, don't know your name, to increase production of chocolate candy, say almond nuggets. It's one of my favorites. So what am I saying? The price mechanism through directing production and equating supply and demand helps the market system to adjust to change. And before, though, the price mechanism gets a chance, we've got to look at the entrepreneur who puts together a business, a firm, puts the factors of production together, land, labor, and capital, and entrepreneurship. And how does he do this? Well, through economic calculation. So the market system adjusts to change, there's a changing landscape, and how does the market adjust to it? Through the price mechanism by the two functions, price equating supply and demand and directing production. And also the economic calculation. And you might be against the bean counting, the economic calculation, if you will, but you have to do it. You have to satisfy yourself that you want to start a business or expand it. And this story that you come up with, if you try to be as objective as you can, facing the uncertainty of the future, everyone, then you can go to a lending officer at a bank or some other financial institution, tell the same story, and perhaps get the funding that's required to, the capital, if you will, to start your project. So the common denominator of values function is really, really important, for, of course, for economic calculation. Then you wed economic calculation with the price mechanism, and we see how the market changes. Also, everybody, our ideas expressed in economic calculation really fit the following category. What is a concept of a business? And there are many parts to it, but economic calculation is a really big part. What does it mean to be a businessman or businesswoman? And yes, you have to know the technology, and you have to adjust to price, of course. But before that, you do your economic calculation. And what it means to be a businessman or businesswoman is to do that calculation, do it as best you can, and you persuade yourself whether or not to undertake a business or not. Oh, well, And then, you know, if the landscape changes, again, you participate in a process of economic calculation. And well, this is the world we live in. So I don't know of too many people who teach a concept of what a business is. But believe me, the price mechanism is very, very important. And I don't think you have to be sold on that. But what you have to be sold on is this process of economic calculation. It's made possible by the money functioning as a common denominator of values. We're really meeting the intellectual needs of business. You know, you have to have some smarts to put together that story, and work with those 8 key concepts. And well, there's a lot more to it as well. So in any event, we have a concept of business. We've settled the big question of the 20th century, namely which form of organization, economic organization, is best. It's the market, because it's impossible to really have socialism. And then we have what? Just this idea of determining whether a firm is going to be a good investment or not. And as individuals, not even thinking about starting a firm, we engage in economic calculation. We do these mental manipulations, which we're so used to, we don't even take special notice of them. Okay, so there you have it. And handout number 3 deals with this. And excuse me again. I want to just briefly look at this diagram here on page 3 of handout number 3. We have our concept of money. And let me share it on the screen again. Let's see. Goodness. Well, there we are. There we are. Okay. Now, if we had a commodity money, let's say gold, we have money in the narrower sense. We have an actual commodity, gold or silver, sometimes platinum and even copper. And but we no longer have a commodity money today. We have fiat money. So this is a money in the narrower sense. And then we have a credit money. We go back to 1861. The northern side did not have the gold to prosecute the war. So they issued greenbacks, the original greenbacks. The original greenbacks were ugly. They were huge pieces of paper, long and high, so to speak, or wide, and a dark green ink. It was just really ugly. But they were no longer redeemable in gold instantaneously, that is. They were made future claims. They were they would be redeemable in gold once the Civil War was successfully prosecuted. And the war ended in April of 1965. It took 4 years to commence redemption again. So it's as if the greenbacks were a type of credit. And the analogy doesn't perfectly fit, but we have a credit money. Now, if you have a commodity money, you have money substitutes. Remember, the 2 negatives of a commodity money, such as gold or silver, is 1, security, and 2, large payments. So we have money substitutes. What are they? Well, money certificates are fully backed money substitutes, okay? And there's just a few of those around. Most countries, their substitutes mostly are partially backed, but most of them have a small subset that they call money certificates that has the full backing. And the um, goodness, I had never seen one for the United States until about 10 years ago, teaching here at Baruch College. And there's a young man, an immigrant from Poland, and he fought in, what was it, Iraq. He had 2 tours, a very courageous young man, and we were going over this diagram, and he says, Dr. Henry, I have a money certificate. My grandfather gave it to me, and he brought it in, and it was issued in 1928. It had for $100, and he was going to spend it. And I told him, I said, "Whoa, back the truck up. This isn't worth $100. It's worth considerably more. It's a collector's item. It has a lot of numismatic value." And so I said, if you go and check it out at a coin dealer who usually swap banknotes too, old banknotes, and if you're not satisfied, I'll buy it from you for the highest price. And so he went out and checked it out, and his $100 bill, 1928 bill, was the money certificate was worth $400, I think $26, something like that. And so he decided to keep the bill. But these money certificates exist, but in today's world, most checks and banknotes are, banknotes in particular here, are partially backed were partially backed in gold or silver. But there's a special type of money substitute where the full backing is always there. Now, then we have fiduciary media, and that's a fancy name for partially backed money substitutes. There's an element of trust here involved with the issue of partially backed bank deposits and notes, in other words, checks and bank notes, and that's that. We have token money. What is token money? It's the coinage we have. We have a silver dollar, half dollar, quarter, dime, nickel, penny. If I left out something, I'm not sure, but that's what we mean by token money. Now, with the fiat money we have today, we no longer have a commodity money. Nothing is redeemable in gold or silver. So the so-called uncovered banknotes and deposits, well, banknotes and deposits, all of them, should be placed under fiat money now, and so should token money. And the money certificates are just simply not redeemable anymore. So we really don't have money substitutes in a fiat system, okay? And that's how you adjust this, the graph to fiat money, this chart, chart to fiat money. We have, what do we have here? Let's see what else. On this handout number 3, you don't have to study solvency or liquidity, but with handout number 4, yes. You want to look into the a priori and empirical approaches on the handout, and to the money aggregates, learn those. And then we have, with these questions, we have the graphing exercise. We have the 4 cases. For example, case 1 is draw the purchasing power of money graph, that is the money supply, money demand graph, the price quantity graph of apples, if you will, and then we have the quantity of loanable funds graph for the interest rate. Okay, draw each one of those graphs for the case of an increasing supply of money and credit. On the midterm, I shall choose 2 of the 4 cases. They will be worded just like this, and you are to draw the 3 graphs. Now remember, label the graphs properly. Each axis should have a label to it. And then you should have arrows. Is the money supply increasing or decreasing? Is Is the money supply, money demanded on the horizontal axis increasing or decreasing? And the same for all the other graphs. Should have arrows there. What I don't want you to do is write a paragraph. You know, your professor will go blind with the number of students we have reading all this. So no paragraphs, please, no explanations. All you have to do is draw the graphs, label them, put the arrows there, and of course get the correct shifts in there to graphically describe the case of an increasing supply of money and credit, or a decreasing supply of money and credit, or an increasing demand for money and credit, or case 4, a decreasing demand for money and credit. So there we go. And everybody, I'm going to come back to a picture of me, goodness. And we're going to do another share screen here in taking up the concept of liquidity. Got handout number 4. I hope that's on there. Let's see. Let's try it again. There we are. And it should be in front of you. And what I'm particularly interested in is liquidity. Now, in particular, everybody, the, what do we want to say here? There are 3 concepts of the financial term liquidity, 3 popular usages. And unfortunately, businessmen and women and others do not tell you which meaning they intend. So we have 3 meanings for the financial term liquidity. And when we get to the Kindleberger, what was it? Well, Aliber rendition of the Minsky model, we'll see that Minsky has his own tripart classification, but it's not a liquidity, it's something else. And these 3 concepts are better than what Minsky uses. So I'm going to go back to a picture of me. I want to go over these 3 concepts. And 2 of the 3 are very easy. What is the first one? Marketability, the ease of buying, the ease of selling. And we've run into that concept with the origin of money theory. And remember, marketability is the key assumption that permits us to jump from step 1 to step 2, step 2 to 3, and even 3 to 4. We found out that the step jump from 3 to 4 is really not legitimate, didn't take place in history that way. We had a price fixing that resulted in the gold standard in most parts of the world, and some silver in a few other parts. So which concept is more important? I think it's the marketability concept, but that has to do with economic reasoning and on a grand scale, and we're not doing that in our class here, our course. But keep in mind that a synonym for marketability is liquidity. And when we mean marketability, it's the ease of buying, ease of selling. And we want to be careful. Many textbooks say, well, the marketability assumption assumes very little price volatility. That's part of the concept as well. And no, it's not. It's the second, that comes from the second concept. And there's a confusion here. A mistake is being made by the textbooks. So the first one is marketability. Then I'm going to jump the second one and come back to it because it's a little bit more difficult than the other 2. And then we have the third one, definition or popular usage of the financial term liquidity. What is it? The availability or unavailability of credit. Many times we hear there's a lot of credit There's a lot of liquidity on the sidelines, ready to come into the equity markets or even the fixed income markets. And when things are bad, oh, we don't have enough liquidity, but that is, we don't have enough credit. So you have this third definition, and sometimes they really make things rough for us to comprehend. People use these two concepts and what will be, I call the second one, the accounting sense, interchangeably. And, you know, confusion reigns. It takes you 10 to 15 seconds to stop and you try to figure out what is intended. And usually you can figure it out, but occasionally you can't. The people use all three terms and they all seem to fit. And so which one was intended by the speaker, by the author? So, and then we come to the one that gives everybody fits. It's the accounting sense of liquidity. And here we have liquidity always served up with the word solvency or insolvency. Now, a firm that is solvent is a firm that can pay all of its debts fully pay all of its debts. If it cannot, then it's insolvent. So what do we want to say here? Solvency is, its definition is pretty well set. And then we have liquidity, second sense now. Liquidity in the accounting sense, well, what does it mean? It means that a firm, a corporation, or an individual can pay all of its debts off in time, fully. What are we saying? Liquidity is a particular type of solvency. You pay off your debts in a timely fashion. And if you do that, if I have $1 million that's due tomorrow and pay my debt, I'm said to be liquid. But if I don't pay it, I'm said to be illiquid. And don't you see, this opens up a new purview, if you will, for us. And many firms can be illiquid, and we don't know if they're solvent or not. We have to look into it on a case-by-case basis. So a liquid firm is a particular form of solvency, type of solvency, in which the firm or the individual pays off his or her debts in full and in a timely fashion. In other words, solvency doesn't mention or account for the time element. Liquidity does. But liquidity is a particular type of solvency by definition. One's assets are so construed that if you were to sell them, liquidate them, if you will, you pay off all of your debts. You can pay off all of your debts in full and in a timely fashion. Banks, for example, when they issue when they did issue money substitutes, and even today when they lend out a sizable amount of deposits, banks are always illiquid, and we hope we have more of them that are solvent than was true in 2007, 2008, and 2009. If all the depositors in a bank were to come to withdraw their deposits, the bank could not do it, cannot do it. Why? Because a sizable fraction of deposits have been lent out in the form of loans. Go back to the borrowers and say, hey, give me my money back. And they will say, well, we'd like to be able to give it back to you, but we can't. We've already used it. We spent it on the factors of production. And so, you have a panic, or you have a run on the bank with everybody trying to withdraw money, but it's just impossible for a bank to meet all the withdrawal demand, and hence a bank by its very nature always is illiquid. And the real question is it solvent or insolvent? And with the Great Recession, most of them in 2007 were insolvent, strange though it may seem. So let's see. Now, if you're dealing with this concept of liquidity, and today you're liquid and therefore solvent, what if prices go down all to heck? The price of the products you offer, the price of the services you offer. And here we have the volatility in price that supposedly is part of the first concept of liquidity, namely marketability. But don't you see, it fits in with the second concept, not the first concept. When price changes, especially when price goes down, and you attempt to liquidate your assets, you may not have enough to cover your debt. So price volatility is an important part of this second definition of liquidity. So the second popular usage of it. But unfortunately, some people attach it to the marketability concept. So everybody, we have here in handout number 4, which I hope is before you now, we have the definition of the 3 concepts of liquidity. But then we have 5 multiple choice questions to answer. Number 1, the term liquidity has 3 popular usages or definitions. What are they? And the answer is D there, marketability, the accounting sense of liquidity, which is a lot to it, and then the availability or unavailability of credit. The answer is D, as in dog, in this first multiple choice question. And then we have, in the accounting sense, a firm that is liquid is also what? A, solvent. It's always, if it's liquid, in the accounting sense, it's solvent for sure. Because a liquid firm is one that pays off all of its debts in full, and there you have meet solvency, and in a timely fashion. Okay. The third multiple choice question is, a firm that is solvent is necessarily A, liquid, B, illiquid, C, liquid or illiquid, depending on the individual case, D, none of the above. And the answer is C. A firm that is solvent is necessarily either liquid or illiquid, depending on the individual case. Well, if a bank is solvent, okay, it's also illiquid, all right? And a bank that's insolvent is also illiquid. So it depends on the particular individual case. If a firm is what, illiquid or liquid. And then number 4, a bank by its very nature is illiquid. That's the choice B, as in boy. And then finally, we have a firm that is illiquid is also what? A, solvent, B, insolvent, either solvent or insolvent, depending on the individual case, D, none of the above. The answer is C, a firm that is illiquid, okay, that cannot meet its debt in a timely fashion and in full, is either solvent or insolvent, depending on the individual case. Now, what are we saying here? Let's suppose I owe each of you $1 million, and it's due tomorrow. There is the case in which I pay everybody the $1 million I owe them, and therefore I am what? Liquid and solvent, by definition. But what if my economic calculation, in the sense we discussed tonight, is faulty, and I can only meet 3/4 of the amount I owe each one of you. I pay each of you $750,000. And I say to you, goodness, I made some entrepreneurial miscalculations. I think I will be able to pay you off in 3 months' time. Will you extend my loan, or will you declare a moratorium on the loan? And in 3 months' time, I will pay you the interest I owe you, extra interest I owe you for the loan, all the extra administrative expenses for considering this loan when we've gone past the due date. And of course, I'll pay you interest and principal back. So if I cannot pay you the $250,000 and you don't grant me another extension, then I'm going to be what? Illiquid and insolvent. If I do pay you back in 3 months' time the $250,000 plus interest and everything else, then I was illiquid today, but likely solvent today as well. Certainly 3 months from now, I am therefore liquid and solvent. So you have to take it on an individual case basis here. And it's particularly interesting today. We have great application of this second definition, popular usage of liquidity. Many U.S. corporations have been made submarginally profitable. Many were super marginally and marginally profitable before. They have been made submarginally profitable because of what? The coronavirus bust. Also, people from 2010 to the present, too much corporate debt has been issued. The extremely low interest rates didn't give a business an incentive to self-finance at all. And so they could just borrow the easy money, if you will, and either expand their business or start new ones. And so we have a lot of corporations with huge amounts of debt. Even with low interest rates, many of them cannot pay interest and cannot pay principal right now. So for sure, they are illiquid, but whether they're solvent or insolvent, you have to, again, take it on an individual basis. And it's the Federal Reserve that engages in lender of last resort activities to determine which firms are liquid and solvent and which are not. So everyone, this is a big thing. It's a possible source of economic instability here in the future. We could, because of the overissue of debt over a 10-year period, huge amount. In fact, in 2010, the amount of debt was $48 trillion, not billion, trillion dollars. And in 2019, 1 year ago, the amount was an eye-blinding 75 trillion. So that's a 56% increase. And the debt continues to mount in the present period in 2020. So, but it's important for you to know these three definitions. And once again, our lives are made difficult because when businessmen and women use this terminology, they don't tell you which meaning they intend. So sometimes we have to guess, and we'll stop right there and for 10, 15 seconds, do our best to determine which meaning is meant by the speaker or by an author of an article or whatever. So there you have it. We have these three concepts of liquidity, and I can guarantee you that there will be a question on liquidity on the midterm examination. And I want to tell you that maybe tomorrow, maybe early Wednesday morning, I will put out a study guide, what to study for the examination to you all. And you know, I feel bad about our inability to get the lectures on Blackboard or on the cloud, but I think we can do just as well with YouTube. So the midterm exam is due. You have to send it to my email address by 9 p.m. Friday, July 31st. And my address is william.henry@baruch.cuny.edu. That's william.henry@baruch.cuny.edu. So I think I have covered all I want to cover today. I haven't told a joke here of late. I have one in mind, but I don't know if it's clean enough to really tell it. So I bid you good night this evening, the 27th of July, Monday. And this will be put on, this will be sent out to you. And well, what do I want to say? The announcement will have a hyperlink, and you can just click on it and you will have it. So, okay. So thank you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night. I'll end the meeting. Okay, here we go.